Greetings, social media land. This is Ted Victor, founder of the Broward Social Network. Today is Thursday, June the 4th at approximately 5 in the afternoon, just a little bit after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. In response to the recent protestings and the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, in addition to many other Americans, and particularly Black men like myself, I've invited a few leaders in order to be able to just get a woman's perspective on what is happening in America today. And I'm going to ask these women to be able to introduce themselves for a minute in terms of what they do and who they are. Understand this is a conversation for every single person in the world, everyone living in America. This is not an issue about just Black men. I do not believe that it is my responsibility only to be able to look after my own safety. It is my responsibility to look after all of you. It is your responsibility to look after me for us to peacefully coexist on this planet. So therefore, I'm going to ask the leaders to introduce yourselves again in 1 minute and tell social media land what you do. This video will be seen by hundreds, if not thousands of people in South Florida and possibly around the world, because this is the nature of the internet. So let's go ahead and start with Dr. Drummond. Dr. Drummond, please unmute your microphone, introduce yourself to social media land, and welcome to the Broward Social Network.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Ted.
Or is it just me?
Yeah, okay, there we go.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
All right, well, thank you for having me, Ted. My name is Dr. Candace Drummond. I am a clinical psychologist and licensed mental health counselor in Florida. I own my own practice that works primarily with private practice physicians of other kinds, chiropractors, pediatricians, plastic surgeons, family practice practitioners, to strategically plan and help them to incorporate mental health and psychological services into their existing practice in order to better help their community, better help their patients, decrease access to services, decrease barriers to services and increase access, and also to improve the work-life balance and the financial lives of the physicians, which we all know physicians don't have a great work-life balance a lot of the times. And so that's really important to me to provide care to the caregivers.
Thank you very much. Is everyone in here hearing a static?
A little bit.
Okay, I'm not sure what's that about. All right, so thank you very much, Dr. Drummond. I'm hoping that we will not have any technical difficulties. Again, I'm not necessarily sure if we will have to switch the phone that you're using, Dr. Drummond, but we will proceed. All right, we'll go on to Pam Keith. Pam Keith, you are no stranger to America. You are no stranger to Florida. Please introduce yourself to social media land. And again, thank you so very much for taking time out of your very busy platform. I have a great amount of respect for all of you women for even taking on the fight that we are taking on in America today. So please tell social media land who you are. Bienvenue, by the way.
My name is Pam Keith, and I am a Democratic candidate running for Florida's 18th Congressional District. This is a swing district in the Palm Beaches and Treasure Coast of Florida. It is a critical component of winning Florida for the Democratic presidential nominee, Joe Biden. This is an area of the state that has a mix of Democrats and Republicans, and it really is a tough nut to crack because it has 3 counties in it that are a little bit different personalities. But the most important thing is that we have candidates running, not just in this district, but all over the country, in every district, that understands the moment that we are in right now and is correct for that moment. I think what has happened is we've had a perverted notion of what is patriotism, because patriotism is not wrapping yourself up in the flag or saying that you love America. Patriotism is loving Americans, right? And one of the great ironies of our time is that there are people who believe that showing a smaller measure of love or respect or justice or equality to a fellow American is somehow justified. And we have to disabuse people of that notion. There is no person walking around this planet that should be entitled to less justice and opportunity and equality than you. or me. We are all equal that way. And that is the focus of my campaign.
I agree with that. And please forgive me because I just want to make sure, I just want to give everyone a 1 minute opportunity to introduce themselves. And we will come back to hear more about your campaign because I'm personally interested in it as well. Let's go on to Marjorie Sheba. Marjorie Sheba, I'm not necessarily sure to what degree I respect you. I honor you. You are a local spiritual heroine, and your wisdom is very much needed by a lot of the community members here. And we are in pain, so please do share with us who you are and what you do. Your microphone is off.
Thank you so much, Ted. It's such a pleasure to be here and to hear these incredible other women who've introduced themselves. My name is Marjorie Sheba. I'm a transformational speaker and a published author. I'm also known to be in the community for the past 12 years as a financial professional. We do a lot of education around total wealth building, the concept of community wealth building, and I hope to share a little bit more of that today.
Thank you so very much. Next is going to be Grace Carrington, and the last person I believe I got, no, then we have Sheila, and I'm going to save Nikki Barnes to be the last person to present herself because I want her to get the first question as to where we are, because believe it or not, as hard as you women work at getting the word out, there's somebody walking down the street and says, oh, I didn't know that. So I'd like for Nikki Barnes to bring us up to speed in terms of where we are today with the climate in America and how did we get here. So let's go ahead and have Grace Carrington and then Sheila McCormick to introduce themselves. Grace, please tell Social Media Land who you are because I respect it. I'm going to say out loud, I'm not necessarily a fan of it because you're one of those powerful sisters who work behind the scenes, but I definitely would like the community to know who you are because again, as I said to Marjorie Sheba and really all of the women on this panel, I'm going to do my very best to not be emotional about it. One of the brothers suggests today, vulnerability is not weakness, but I really, really do admire you sisters so very much because you are the women who give birth to humanity. And I think we men probably don't do enough to share the respect that you deserve. So Grace Carrington, who are you and what do you do?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Ted, for always putting the information out so those who don't get their news and their information through normal mediums can always find information through you. So I want to thank you for that and putting this together. I am Grace Carrington. I am a small business owner, independent consultant for home care services in the home, medical equipment, and most recently, healthcare insurance sales, long-term care, as well as annuity and financial planning as well. I just want to say to everybody that's out there listening to this, we don't have a lot of time. My focus, we'll get to more detail than that. I'm also the state committee woman for Broward County, one of the most provocative Broward counties in the state of Florida, and I serve on the Democratic National Committee as well.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. I'm not necessarily sure. Is everybody hearing the delay or is it just me? You guys are hearing it and seeing it?
Yes. I'm assuming it's one of the introductions at this point for the minute. You didn't want anything in addition to that.
Grace, we're not necessarily able to hear you that well. I'm not necessarily sure you're using, I don't know what device that you're on, but for some reason there's a lag. Dr. Drummond, go ahead and give us a word to hear because I think you might have switched devices. Go ahead and let me see if I can hear you clearly now.
Yes, I went ahead and switched. Is that better?
Yes, much better, much better. All right, so let's go on to Sheila McCormick, and Grace will come back to you, okay, because I'm not necessarily sure why we have a delay.
Apple.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Grace. All right, Sheila McCormick, please introduce yourself to social media land. Let us know who you are and what you do.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Ted. My name is
Welcome.
Sheila Shafulus McCormick, and I am a United States House of Representative candidate, Democratic candidate, and I am a healthcare executive for Home Health Agency for the last 10 years. I've been advocating the last 20 years to ensure that the community is getting healthcare, access to it, and really fighting against the disparities that exist in healthcare. Together with my husband, we also have a law firm, McCormick Law Firm, which is based actually out of DC, where we fight discrimination. And I'm a mom at this point. I have 2 teenagers, and it breaks my heart every single day. You know, when they were growing up and I knew they got to this age where they're 16 and 17, you know, the fear was always there. This just magnifies it to another level. But I'm with you, Ted, where we can try to be vulnerable without being too emotional. But the truth is what's going on right now, how we're having to calm our children facing 2 issues, because we had health issues that first happened with the pandemic, and the kids were scared in school, and especially in those years where you want your friends, you cannot be around them. Then when you see people getting sick, not getting access to the healthcare they need and dying, that affects our children also. So this is another level where we're fighting and finding that our kids are really having a problem dealing with what's going on.
Thank you so very much, Sheila. Thank you so very, very, very much. All right, Nikki Barnes, I think I got everybody, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think I got everybody. Okay, Nikki Barnes. Nikki Barnes, I met you when I was running for office 2 years ago, and I've been following you ever since. And I think it would be fair if I were to say you are a force of nature in Florida. And I am, there aren't enough words to describe my degree of awe in what you do. So talk to us about who you are and what you do, and then go straight into answering the question as to where are we in America today and how did we get here?
Great. Thank you, Ted. Thank you to all the ladies who are participating today. I think Ted kind of kicked it off. I'm probably infamously known for my social media presence and unfiltered responses to a lot of things that happen around the state of Florida in the South, but I'm just a Southern girl. I was born in Beaumont, Texas. I grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina to military parents. I relocated to Florida in 2008 with my career in wireless technology. And now I live in Wakulla County, Florida, a rural county that has a bad reputation for how it treats citizens in some cases, like most of rural Florida. But also, I'm a mom as well, right? I'm raising 3 Black kids in a rural county south of Tallahassee. You know, Tallahassee is a more metropolitan type area versus where we live, but we chose this area because the school system was better. Like many parents have the opportunity and the capital to choose where their kids are educated, you typically choose where the school systems are better. So, you know, when we look at where we are now and the state of this country and what we saw happen in Minneapolis with George Floyd and what we've been continuously seeing, you know, all the way since many of us threw on our first hoodie with Trayvon Martin, we are still on the play button. We still don't have solutions. We still haven't seen this full movie. We still have not gotten justice. We still don't know if we can trust the system, even when now in Minneapolis, with AG Keith Ellison, I know we have the best legal team prosecuting these cops for what happened to George. But even with the best legal team we can put forward, will a jury of their peers convict them? And is it a jury of our peers or their peers? And that's where the system still cannot be trusted. So when we talk about where we are now, the civil unrest you're seeing in the country, we haven't even made it into the movie yet. We just got a trailer.
All right, so let me just take a moment to share something with you and everybody who's watching.
I'm a young Black doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind, every day I'm being hunted as prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough struggle. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live.
Okay, so courtesy of Good Morning America, that was Keyshawn Bryant, 12 years old, who is saying that he just wants to live. So let's go to Marjorie Sheba. Marjorie Sheba, what comes to mind when you hear the voice of this young, brave soul who is singing out to the world about just wanting to live? Please unmute your microphone.
So much emotion, so much, because we see this young man. He is Black. He is singing. He's, I believe, a young gospel artist. He is young, and he should not have to think about his life in his home country. He should not have to think about losing his life, and not to a bad neighborhood or a group of gangs or thugs, or we're talking about at the hands of law enforcement officers, those who should know better, who should be looking out for his well-being. It's a lot to take in. The words when he says, "I am chased like a prey." And unfortunately in this country, it is the truth. It is unfortunately that Black men, Black males, and people of color in general are undermined, are harassed, are targeted. And I've heard when people think to make it about an individual perception or an individual situation, these are the bad cops, not all cops or law enforcement officers are bad. And that's absolutely true. But the problem is with the system. The problem is with the system when you have people in power who turn a blind eye to the situation, who perhaps with their own racist outlooks allow this to go on and allow Blacks to be a target, allow Blacks to be looked upon as a lesser than. And then when you have a bad apple who comes into a system of the sort, then clearly they're going to exercise their racist ideas and beliefs. Clearly they're going to take advantage of a situation because they know they will not be held accountable for it. So this is what we're really talking about. And I look at this video and I think about my nephews, I think about my brothers, I think about, you know, other Black men, young and older in the neighborhood. And I know this is definitely a fear and a concern that they hold in their hearts every day living in this country.
Thank you very much. Grace Carrington, we're going to try to bring you on to see if we can hear you. Unmute your microphone, please. And I'm going to ask you a similar question. Grace Carrington, is the Black man an endangered species? I know that's a loaded question. I'm not necessarily sure how to even articulate this. I've been in school for a very long time, but I'm not necessarily sure how to articulate this pain that I'm feeling. Is the Black man an endangered species?
Ted, I don't want to answer that question by simply saying yes, but since it is their perception, the answer has to be yes. If you can't go into a store and not be followed because you're making a purchase, if you can't go to a movie theater, if you can't do all the normal things like getting in your car and driving somewhere without being stopped, without being questioned where you're going, do you live here? The answer has to be yes. And we have to deal with that reality. We have to. I don't have sons. I've raised 3 daughters, and I do have nephews, and I worry for them. I fear for their lives, like the 12-year-old that was just singing so beautifully in what you shared. I fear for their lives. And in America in 2020, I used to always say, I'm so glad I wasn't born back then, and so forth and so on. But this is the same thing 52 years later. It has to end.
So we haven't made any progress. We haven't made any progress. Pam Keith, one of the beauties I'm seeing, because I always say that there's, and thank you for that response, Grace. One of the beauties, I always say that there's a silver lining in crises. I'm seeing everybody join us on this mission, right? I'm seeing white folks tell other white folks Black Lives Matter. And I've also seen where cops are kneeling down. What Kaepernick was shunned for some time back and was called names for, but cops are kneeling down and they understand that this is a human request to be valued equally like everybody else. Like I should not be going to Publix next door, buy things for my kids, wondering if I'm going to make it back. So talk to us about coalition building, because again, I'm going to stress this. We are all part of the human family. It just so happens that you all happen to be part of the Black family, but we're all part of the human family. We need allies to join us on this venture. There's just no way that I should be the only person responsible for my safety.
Right. You know, I think one of the really interesting things about what's going on here is this is a broader conversation than just what the police are doing. It's about the system and the greater environment in which all of this is taking place. I mean, part of what we saw was a attitude in the police and many police that we're still seeing as they're confronting protesters, is an attitude of dominion, control, extreme prejudice. It's the attitude, the tone of voice, the hostility with which they confront some people versus other people. They don't necessarily need to kill somebody to send the message that this is a person that I, as a police officer, I'm going to be deferential, or I'm going to be respectful of, or I'm going to be, you know, pay attention to try to serve. And this other person is somebody that I'm going to try to control, dominate, submit, you know, put into submission and make feel small and make feel irrelevant. That is a bigger attitude issue that we are now having to have a serious conversation about. And that young man that was singing, he wants to live and I want him to live. But I also want to address the issue that he's more likely to die at the hands of his fellow teenager who gets a hand on a gun. He's more likely to die because we have tolerated all this time. We have tolerated neighborhoods being turned into war zones with gang violence and trafficking of guns and drugs into our communities because people decided that so long as that was contained within the Black community, it was not something they needed to worry about. And so what we allowed is for two parallel Americas to exist within the confines of our nation. One that in which you are going to have good schools and good hospitals and good malls and good policing and good everything. And then another one that is a war zone. It's like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It's, you know, dilapidated neighborhoods, falling down schools, poor infrastructure, poor environmental, infrastructure within those communities. And we allow that to happen. We say that's just perfectly normal. So what I am encouraged by at this time is that we're getting leadership and voices asking some very important questions about that particular acceptance, that acceptance of a citizenship that does not enjoy the true fruits and benefits of true liberty and true equality in our country.
Thank you so very much. Sheila McCormick, you are a candidate for Congress, and therefore it's going to be your responsibility. Thank you very much, Pam, for that wonderful response. It's going to be when elected, it's going to be your responsibility. If someone's mic is not muted, but okay, we'll go with it. Yes, it's going to be your responsibility to look after all Floridians in your district. And I'm not necessarily sure. I as a person who studied anthropology and sociology, I'm wondering, because I had a cousin who always said to me, people do to you what you let them do to you. People do to you what you let them do to you. I'm just wondering, haven't we done enough? We've marched, we've gone to school, you've obeyed the laws that they've created, but yet we still have a disparity. So I'm not necessarily sure if I can fill the shoes of you wonderful folks who are trying to create some sort of level playing field in society. And I'm saying this with a tone of trying to hide my anger, my tension in the voice, because I have not been brave enough to watch the video. I haven't. And I'm supposed to be this big, strong guy, right? But I have not been strong enough to watch the video because I'm an asthmatic, and just hearing I can't breathe. I have a hard time breathing. So you folks, you elected officials, you running for office, you community leaders have a humongous responsibility. So Sheila, talk to us as to some ideas as to how to address disparity in communities of haves and have-nots.
Well, to answer your first question about have we done enough as a people, we've done more than enough. The fact that we are Americans means that we deserve the same kind of treatment. The truth of the matter is that there's been a few people who are in Congress, who are senators, and they felt like these few statutes that we have that are supposed to be protecting us is actually working. And the truth is it hasn't been working for years. And everybody's always known that there's been a foul stench of racism systematically that flows through our judicial system, through the policing system. And we've turned a blind eye, even when it comes to healthcare, when people are dying every single day. So we have to revise that. If you're looking at the policing system, they have an internal mechanism to police themselves, which we can't have. You always have to have a system where there's checks and balances. And we have to have something like that created on the federal level to make sure that when you're in any state that you're protected. If there's too much of a subjective threshold in each single state, and how they're actually policing determines on what color you are. For some reason, it always ends up that somehow we deserve it, whatever's going on. We have this presumption of guilt or deserving or bringing something upon ourselves, and that has to change. So I think what we're seeing right now is just a combination of the people being tired, along with the economic crisis we're having. At this point, we're left with nothing. So even the people who were quiet because they said, you know, at least if I work hard, I'll have money. They're like, listen, we can't go any further because no matter how much I make, it doesn't matter about class. I am still Black when I get up in the morning. My children are still Black when they go forward, and they will be confronted with that reality. So at this point, it needs to take systematic change that's going to come through federal laws, and that's just it. And we have to realize that what the body is doing. We cannot allow those subjective measures when it comes to policing, and we have to look at everybody who's complicit in it. It's not just the police officers who are subjected to this and who are doing this. Who else is involved? If we look at even the tape, why did they even take his pulse not on the spot? You're supposed to take his pulse and check all his vitals on the spot. Why did they wait to do it when he got into the ambulance? They know, you know, what you're supposed to do. They're used to the system of making sure that the police officers can't seem to be implicit or they did something. Everybody's aware. If we're even looking at the lawyers who are involved, who is actually bringing the cases and what kind of cases, everybody knows who is working in the department, who is working on behalf of the state. The objective is to make sure that the police officers and the state is protected and doesn't have liability. That has to change. We have to get to a place where everybody is concerned about making sure that everybody has equal treatment and that we're not being vilified. And it's not just Black people are bad. And that's the truth. That's the sad history of America. You know, police always look at us as being bad and being at fault, and we have to correct that.
So your point is bringing me to the next question, and I appreciate you for that very revealing, very serious response. And I'm going to go to the therapist of the therapist, which is Dr. Drummond. Dr. Drummond, based on candidate McCormick's response and ideas, where are we psychologically as a people? Because I believe I'm strong, I claim it. However, embarrassingly, I must admit to you, thoughts of hopelessness and helplessness, you know, just yesterday, one of the panelists says, you know what, we've done all the right things. You know, I was the one because I was more afraid of my mom than the police at the time. My mom was like, I will end you if you embarrass me. I will end you. I will eliminate you. True story. I was more afraid of my mother than I was of the cops, because she's all of her hard work, all of the hard work that's been poured into us as a people, because we are the children of the survivors, right? There are some of our ancestors who didn't make it. It's the strong ones who survived the slave trade, and now we're here, and we obviously are strong. However, thoughts of hopelessness and helplessness do run my mind, because I'm not necessarily sure when it's going to end. I'm not sure if this is the last one. I'm not sure. So what are your thoughts on where are we psychologically as a people?
I mean, first off, I want to point out, you said embarrassingly, like you have to admit embarrassingly. That's the first problem, is that we as a people are embarrassed to admit when the trauma of real life, when the seriousness of real life has actually made an impact on us internally. We're embarrassed to ask for help, or even not even knowing where to get that help, because the access, like I said, the access to treatment, not just healthcare, but mental health care in our community is much less. The access to therapists and people that look like us, that we can talk to, people who can also understand our shared trauma, again, it's hard to access, because we're not in connection to that the way that we should be. But again, psychologically, we're in a psychological pandemic. The same way we're in a health pandemic, we are experiencing a mental health pandemic as well. Right now, from the children all the way up to the adults, people are dealing with this situation. From before, they were dealing with the effects of isolation. They were dealing with the effects of the anxiety of the financial crisis. Now, like you say, we're on top of that, we're dealing with the anxiety of the fear for our lives, as well as the anxiety of, well, like you said, haven't we done enough? What else can we do now? And then that whole, like you said, sense of hopelessness. Well, I've done everything I can. I almost throw my hands up in the air and feeling like there's nothing left possible. The impact of these last few months that have occurred in the United States not only are going to have decades of mental health impact on our children. I talked to a 19-year-old yesterday who was like, I was 9 years old when Trayvon Martin died. I was 9 when he was murdered. I don't understand what is happening in this country. I was 9. And I mean, it didn't impact me in the same way, because I was an adult. I had a lot going on in my world. I had my kids, I had my business, I had, but imagine for a 9-year-old, now I'm looking at the children of the pandemic, who 6 and 7-year-olds are running from other people because they're afraid to be in contact or in social distance or proximity with anyone. Those things are not going to go away anytime soon. Those things, as well as like the fear that we're feeling for, like I said, for our lives. At this point, Black women represent the most educated demographic in the United States. Black women. If we're talking about knowledge is power, we have the knowledge. So there's something that is missing from that equation. And that's why our mental health is in such dire straits, because we feel like, well, what now?
Right. Nikki Barnes, how is it that we can have this translated to the power to vote? How is it that we can use this momentum once again, and this is also for you as well, Grace, to talk about why should the people still not give up on the power to vote? What say you, Nikki Barnes?
Yes, this is a great time to have conversations about when you see injustices happen, who's responsible for ensuring that families and victims and those that are harmed in this process seek justice. And I think too many times people think about voting, they think about the president. And that's it. Unless you got a homeboy or a homegirl or somebody out here running for a city council seat, and maybe they've been your local city commissioner or county commissioner, and they're moving up a ladder to maybe a congressional seat or a gubernatorial race, people don't see past that. It's just the president. But when we see these acts of injustice, when we see these constant questions about, well, why weren't charges brought up? Who was supposed to take care of this? Who do we go back to and talk to? You know, and in some cases become our own version of a Karen. I want to speak to the justice manager. It's at the ballot box. This is a time to educate young people, middle-aged people, older people, that the people that you are looking to or looking for to seek justice in these cases are also elected. They're elected at the local level. These are your state attorneys. These are your public defenders. When you wonder why people don't have representation or why they've been sitting in jail for so long because they have no bonds, these people that are responsible for getting justice for them, for making sure they have opportunity to go back and live their lives and then go back and fight the system, are all elected. And I think some of you may be surprised that even up here in Tallahassee, we have an issue with the public defender office. We have 2 law schools up here, right? We have FAMU law and we have FSU law. Mm-hmm. And we have law students, I mean, fresh off the bar in our public defender office. They don't know strategy. They don't know experience. They don't, know what motions to file or what's available. All that comes through reputation and guidance by someone who has the tenure in the office to help you. And these public defenders, they don't teach. They just hire and throw them a stack. But if we demand that they instruct these people, if we demand they offer additional resources to make them accountable for the clients they have, maybe they have a different message or time for you to get their vote. So this has opened up a whole new era about the importance of voting. If anything were to happen to you and you need representation, the person who's going to get that to you was elected. Did you pick the right person to lead that public defense office to get you the best representation? If you did not, and you got messed up in this system, especially if you didn't do anything wrong, then it's really time to get out there and talk about everyone's elected seats, not just the president.
Thank you very much for that. Grace Carrington, talk to us a little bit more about the power to vote and the current climate as well, because it's possible somebody out there might be thinking, you know what, Martin Luther King marched peacefully. Mahatma Gandhi talked about peaceful movement. And here it is. We have a Rodney King, we have Amadou Diallo, we have a Aubrey, we have a Floyd. And so again, there is an element of helplessness in this climate.
Well, first thing I want to say is
Grace, hold on. Hold on, Grace. Are you on a laptop or on a computer? On a phone?
I am. A laptop.
Are you on your laptop? You're on your phone or on the computer? Is it possible?
On the computer.
Is it possible? Please forgive me. Is it possible you can try to get on your cell phone? Because it seems as though the delay is bad. We're not able to hear what you're saying. I'm going to come back to you, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to come back to you. All right. I'm going to come back to you. Perfect. Right. Let's go to Sheila, and then we'll go back to
I'm on a Zoom call, so when I'm
all right, let's go to Sheila, and then we'll go to Marjorie. And really, this is a question that Pam can weigh in on as well. And somebody mentioned it, and I'm not necessarily sure the value of it right now because people want to just break stuff. People want to just burn stuff down. Talk about policy, because believe it or not, which I was shocked to find out. Talk about policy, because it is in the manual, the training manual in Minnesota, the neck on the knee, it's in the training manual in Minnesota, excuse me. So the police officers who saw that happening, it wasn't some sort of a crazy restraint tactic after George Floyd was handcuffed and on the floor. It's actually policy. So when the defense comes for that gentleman, don't even want to mention his name, they're going to say, well, this is how we were trained. And for the life of me, is it crazy for me to think about, should we get together as a people and draft a policy for America? Should we get together and say, you know what, you should not put your neck on a person's neck. Sorry, put your knee on somebody's neck as a formal avenue to restrain them. So let's go ahead and hear Sheila, Sheba, and then also Pam Keith to talk about that. Sheila, talk about the meaning of policy and revisiting policy at this time.
So there's always been policy out there, especially for the last 10 years, in which they have been trying to streamline the police tactics, training, and even the issues that are being brought up, the internal mechanisms that we talked about. But for some reason, they have not been able to even get onto the congressional floor for even vote. So there are policies there. There's no need for us to go in and as a people and draft it, even though that would be lovely. I think what we have to do is start drafting it. You know, the people we're electing have to start getting in there, making it important, and actually taking it to the floor, demanding that it gets taken to the floor and it's put there. Because as I mentioned, without that streamline, that objective standard of policing that goes throughout the whole United States, and not just to certain states where they have their own, we're always going to find these crazy standards, these crazy forms of training that they implement. And the truth is, when it comes to those tactics, I would like to know how many white people actually got the knee on the neck. How many of them did they get that? And those are the mechanisms that we have to start drafting into our policy, right? We cannot go forward without doing an internal investigation on every police department. What are the policies? What do they look like? Because we know that a lot of them come from historically systematic racism. We know that's where it came from. So if we know it came from there, why not go in and do inventory? What practices are in place and how do we turn it around? So that has to be the first step, is that we do inventory. After that inventory, we start changing the training processes, and then we set up a unilateral, more than just letting them police themselves. Like I mentioned earlier, there is no such checks and balances. If there's an officer, you know, a good officer who says, and I say quotations because I like to assume that most officers are good. You know, I don't believe that people just come in, they want to do this. But if an officer wants to report something going on, he goes through that internal mechanism. And what protection does he actually have when he's reporting this? A lot of those times, those officers are actually, they're scolded. And so that kind of regulatory body has to be outside of the policing office, outside of the police itself. It has to be a central body where they're checking and balances. So I think those three policies are imperative, and there needs to be more policies when it go extension, because as I mentioned, you know, the judicial system is implicit also. It's not just these police officers. So we need to take a real look at ourselves as Americans, and for every institution, how do we actually deal with this instead of pretending that it doesn't exist? And I think that's the beauty what's in our pain right now. This is a real look at America. This is a real look at who we are. And what I realized from this is that this is the first time our children are seeing racism. And you know, what Dr. said was correct. They didn't see this before. And there's a lot of other kids, younger kids now, who are on the internet who could be educated. So they're seeing it and they're saying it's appalling. You can't lie to this generation anymore because they'll Google it. And I think that's why they're rising up with so much force. So what we have to do with that force is follow through for them. Let's put the policies out there. Let's carry it out and show them that they can believe in us again, that the system is here to protect them.
Thank you very much. Sheba, what say you about policy? And because I don't remember, what city do you live in, and is this clearly, I'm almost sure every police department in America is reviewing their policies now, and if they're not, they definitely should be, because the next police officer that puts their knee on a man's neck, particularly the Black man's neck, or really anybody's neck, I'm pretty sure they either should or will lose their jobs. So what are your thoughts on drafting policy, suggested policy for police departments that need support because maybe they didn't understand that this is something wrong to do logically?
Ted, James Baldwin says, not everything that is faced is immediately changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And so with that in mind, you asked the question earlier, are we doing everything? Have we done everything? And my answer would be no. We haven't done everything. Someone mentioned earlier about voting beyond just voting for the president, thinking about the judiciary and the other aspects, the legislative, the senators, commissioners, and who actually play the day-to-day role. We also need to think about, from my professional standpoint, being collective in the way that we push against these movements that continue to oppress us as a community. There is so much to say about the dollar, our buying power, right? A lot of times we come out of these protests, we come out of these rallies, and months later, we consume the things that the major corporations, who literally every day have their knees on our necks, right? Who literally every day we can research, and sometimes it's public knowledge to know the policies they stand for, the representatives that they are endorsing in, the campaigns they are sponsoring. They are telling you what they think is okay with America. They are telling you what they think can continue on. And sometimes it's willful blindness. It may not necessarily be from a standpoint of being necessarily a racist corporation, but it still means that we have not done the work we need to do to put our plight in front of them and say that we matter, that this needs to change. I'm in Fort Lauderdale, and a quick example, a friend of mine that I know worked for the Broward Sheriff's Department, young Black men started out, and very quickly things started happening with his upline, okay, that started to differentiate his position as the only Black guy in the department from the other young recruits that they had, from the sergeant himself, from their boss's level himself, would make comments like, if there was a break-in in the neighborhood they were to patrol, hey, so-and-so, why don't you tell your friends to stop the break-ins they're doing? Because it was assumed it was Black people that was doing it, and he was being associated with these individuals. Very clearly, a number of things were happening that would literally outcast him. And these other officers and these other law enforcement officers started to behave differently towards him. They started to assume their role. And so what we're seeing, it's not necessarily, that's why to me it's so important, Ted, that it's about the system. And those on this conversation who are, aspiring politicians, who are literally and directly engaged, it's really important the role that they'll play, because most people come in intending to do the right thing. But you can be in a position when your boss, when those who are senior officers, when they behave a certain way, they certainly can overshadow the environment. They can tarnish the environment. They can cause a person who otherwise would have wanted to intervene to be neutralized, like what we saw with the other 3 officers, as this particular officer continued to do the deed that he was doing. And so this is where I say we have more work to do. Our buying power, where we put our money, the banks that we place our money into, the stores that we buy, we endorse them with our dollars. And even as we progressively encourage buying more from the local business, Black business owned or minority business owned, we need to also hold these individuals accountable as to where they spend their collective dollars, as to the candidates they support, because they have to think about the community as well that's pouring into them.
Thank you so very much. Let's get to Grace. Grace, you look just a little fuzzy to me, but I think, let's see if we can hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Much better, much better, much better.
I'm going to go back to where we were when we were talking about where do we go forward, I believe, was your question.
Okay.
One of the things that I want young people to understand, and I say young people because the voters that we have that come out to vote for every election, school board, municipal, soil and water, county, everything up to and including the presidents are usually those of 40 and older. And what I want to say to the young people is, if your vote wasn't valuable, if it wouldn't make such a significant difference, would they be trying to take it away from you? Would they be trying to suppress you?
So I want to
Mm.
know, because, you know, our young people are brilliant. I see the way they do all the things. They come up with all these devices, and they are so creative. And I know young people, I remember seeing someone on Black Enterprise magazine that I read and subscribe to. This 12-year-old created a bow tie phenomenon. He is a millionaire, and he is only 14 years old.
Wow.
So I know that we have the wherewithal to be able to do what we need to do. And I just wish and I pray that basically young people would understand their vote is invaluable. If we can just get them to understand that one concept, then we wouldn't have to worry about on elections, meaning presidentials, or off elections, meaning gubernatorials. They would vote in every single election, and they would start making change from their backyard. And what do I mean by that? Their cities and municipalities. If they would vote and pick their council members or city commissioners and mayors, they would change their backyard. And that's where it starts from. You can't worry about what's happening in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue if you can't get your pothole filled, if you don't have a decent grocery store that you can drive to, if you have food deserts, if you don't have a post office that you can go to that's less than 5 minutes away. You got to take care of home first. If they could just understand that, I think we'd be so far ahead of this game. I really do. And that's one of my focuses, obviously.
Thank you very, 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 very much. Definitely, all politics is local. That's why a lot of people say, well, having said that, which leads me to my next question, which goes to Nikki Barnes. Nikki, talk about the relationship between cops and community. Should we have a conversation with the hiring practices of those entities about making sure that the staff or the team that they're hiring is representative of their local communities? Because my guess is, I could be wrong, but my guess is a Black cop is less likely to put his knee on the neck of a Black man. So is it possible that we should look at, and this is also for you, Pam Keith, as well, to look at the relationship between cops and community and help them, give them some, because I'm just one person. I really cannot see beyond my experiences. Is it possible that they are kind of blindly hiring whoever shows up?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone who's being paid with taxpayer money should look like the communities they're there to serve. That's cops, that's teachers, elected officials, that's the city staff, county staff, state staff. It should look like the communities they serve. I think it's imperative in law enforcement that these elected sheriffs, these appointed police chiefs that are usually appointed through your city commissioners or city councils, are cognitive and purposeful in their hiring practices to ensure that their police force looks like the community they're there to protect and serve. It goes beyond just seeing someone that looks like you in a police car. It goes to a better understanding of what's going on in the community when they get called out. You know, if a Black cop shows up and someone's having a fight, and they say, oh, it's not that big deal, he just dunked on me. A Black cop's gonna understand, okay, they run a basketball court, things got a little scrappy, it's cool. A white cop may not understand what that was and can't put the story together beforehand to make a decision about, this is not a situation of violence. This is not anything that needs to be reported, documented. They need to just walk it out. It was a heated game. This is not a big deal. That matters. That matters because we see time and time again where law enforcement officers are called to a scene, primarily white, in Black communities. Something has popped off. They're trying to question somebody. That person walks away. And then what do we hear in the news? Oh, they were resisting. They were non-compliant. He started to run. He looked like a criminal. And all those analogies and attitudes or whatever come because that cop doesn't understand that community. He doesn't understand what's going on when he hits the scene. He can't stand in front of a crowd comfortably and say, okay, let me know what happened, what popped off. So it definitely matters. It's definitely important that these law enforcement offices are, again, purposeful in their hiring process, looking at the makeup of their community and making sure that the deputies that are on the ground that are servicing the community look like and can relate because I done seen a couple. They may look like, but they're not from around these parts.
Nikki,
and they can relate.
Nikki, let me ask you a question before I go to Pam Keith. There's a young lady who is African-American. She's a sister with national name recognition and presence. And she says that cops kill more white men than black men. Do you know anything about that? Are we to not, or are we making too much of what we're seeing? I mean, is it possible that this is pervasive, but now with the technology of cell phones, we are seeing things that we probably didn't see happen yesterday or the week before? I'm really not up on the stats, because I do have a response for her when she says, I don't understand why people are in uproar because more white men are being killed by the police than black men. What would you say to that?
So I know you're talking about, I have two responses to that. One, when you look at percentage of population and the impacts we're seeing in the black community versus white. So quantitatively, yeah, you may see more white men die at the hands of police officers than the actual volume or count of black men. But when you take those two numbers and compare them to the population, our percentage is significantly higher than that of white America. And subsequently, because I know who you're talking about, and she works my nerves too. But not only that, if white America feels that the police officers are killing their men more than they're killing black men, then I'm sorry, y'all a lazy bunch of activists. If the police are killing, and you're saying indiscriminately when you bring up, oh, they're killing white men too, it's not my fault you sat on your couch and let your brother die and y'all didn't do nothing. Y'all was supposed to get up and when Jim Bob came out here and killed your Uncle Buddy and them and the rest of them. If y'all didn't want to do that, that was on you. But what you're not gonna do is come into our community and indiscriminately kill our men and our women and then try to make them out to be criminals and deserving of that behavior. It's not gonna happen. So they have a choice, including the lady that represents them that continues to say these, ridiculous statements. She too has a choice to use her platform and say, if cops are killing more white men than they're killing black men, the question, Miss Thang, why are cops killing men at all?
Period. Thank you so very much. Pam Keith, what say you when it comes to the relationship between cops and community?
I have a couple things I want to chime in on. First of all, I want to talk about your sense of despair. And every time, it's totally normal, right? It's totally acceptable because it's natural to see something done over and over again and not know that your efforts are going to change anything. But I just have to remind everybody listening that we stand on the shoulders of ancestors that had even less guarantees, less promises, less resources, less visibility, and they were able to stay the course. So we owe to our future generations. Yeah, we owe to our future generations no less than the courage and the commitment and the resourcefulness and the resilience of our ancestors. So I do not allow myself to wallow in that feeling, even though I can have that feeling. I can't let it sit upon me because let it deter me from action, because at the end of the day, right, like that's where we come from. The second thing I wanted to say was that we are by no means, and I mean by no means, exercising the power that we actually have to its maximum capacity. So if we've only got 10% progress, then let's look at, is that 10% progress correlated to 100% effort? No, it is not. It's 10% progress related to 10% effort. I'm not suggesting that there aren't some of us that die on the cross for our communities. There are plenty of us who do. But what I'm suggesting is, do we vote like we could? Do we run for office like we could? Do we show up at the food pantry and serve like we could? Do we extend love and sometimes a strong word to our young people that we see in our community like we could? No, we don't. So if we are disappointed with our outcome, perhaps we should be somewhat disappointed in our effort too. And I don't want to just chastise. I want to give a solution, right? And one of the solutions that we have here is vote by mail. And I want to talk about that specifically for a moment, because vote by mail is a dynamic changer. It's not just another method of doing the same thing, right? We're voting by mail. No. What vote by mail does means that we vote at home, which means we can vote in community. We can have, instead of having the Zoom call to check in on your family, you can have the Zoom call to vote together. You can have your book club, your fraternity, your sorority,
in a safe space, in a safe space, absolutely.
In a safe space where you're sharing information. I mean, part of the reason why people vote only for president is because they don't know who's those names down ballot.
Exactly.
They don't know what they do. They don't know what their job is. They don't know none of those people. They don't know who to trust, so they leave it blank and they defer to the judgment of the people who do know, right? But we don't ever have to defer our power to anyone else ever again. We can make sure that when we vote, we've got our glass of wine, or we got our we got our guacamole, we got our Zoom call with our tribe together, working together. We got somebody that's Googling the judges, and somebody that's Googling the state house, and somebody that's checking in on the county commission races. And you guys come to understanding as a group based on knowledge, and holding each other accountable to actually get those ballots back in, because a lot of us get the ballot, just let it sit in the mail pile, right? And then we have the message. That is why the GOP is spending $20 million to try to stop vote by mail, because they understand, even if we do not, the power of collective, informed, empowered, and unobstructed voting. They get it if we don't. When you vote by mail, your ballot goes to the U.S. Postal Service distribution center and goes directly to the supervisor of elections, which means it's not reporting from a precinct. Do you know what a problem it is when they can't decide which bad machines they're going to send to the black precincts, which non-functioning machines, where they're going to put their precincts so that there's no parking or you can't get there on the bus, where they're going to make sure you have to stand in line for 6 hours to vote. When you take the power away from people to burden your vote, then you level the playing field almost automatically. No wonder the people who can't stand the notion of Black people voting are so angry about the idea of us using the same mechanism that allows them to vote from their country club or for their senior retirement community. I'm telling you that we have a mechanism to change how we vote, which means it's a mechanism to change how we think. And when we think differently, we're going to stop thinking passively. We're going to stop thinking that we're throwing up our hands in despair about what's happening to us. Ain't nothing happening to us. We are failing to do what we need to do to make our imprint on what was going to happen. Because in this country, there are plenty of places that you simply cannot win without Black people, right? So if we say, okay, here's the deal, only the people that satisfy us on these 5 things are going to get our vote, trust and believe those 5 things will be addressed. Why? Because it's all about power. It's all about power. And the theory is that they can buy name recognition. They can buy ignorance by flooding you with lies about so-and-so so that you don't know that you need to be voting for such and such. But when we vote collectively, all of that gets mitigated. We have the tools and we have the ancestry that tells us to use those tools.
And Pam Keith, my goodness, I pledge to join you on that endeavor. I have a small drop in the world called the Broward Social Network with nearly 9,000 to 10,000 participants. And I'm going to flood my platform with the mission to get out and vote. I'm asking everybody, if you have a bicycle that can hold 2 people, bring a neighbor on the back of your bike, skateboard with them. If there's a little person who's retired, or old person who's retired next door, bring them with you. My guess is that super voters will always vote. My specialty is to have people who have the power to vote to actually vote.
Right.
I cannot tell you, as a teacher, when I'm in the classroom, I'm seeing young people throwing away what we fought for.
Right. And I want to can I chime in just a second? I want to make a special point here, Ted, because I think this is a really important one. I know you put your effort into Amendment 4. I know
Yes.
I did. I know Grace did. I know Nikki did. All of us on this call killed ourselves to get Amendment 4 across the line. There is no greater act of rebellion than for those people who have been incarcerated and have gotten their vote back to use it and remove the people that criminalized being Black in the first place. It is payback on crack to use that vote. So
That's
we cannot ignore that there are going to be people, our brothers and sisters, who are now going to be able to vote, maybe for the very first time, maybe for the first time since they were 18. But we cannot let them squander that, right? We fought too hard to get it. We fought too hard to get it. So that's the thing I want to say. I know how much work you put into that. Because I saw the Broward Social Network talking about Amendment 4 up, down, and sideways. But we got it done. So how are we going to squander it?
Right. So there's a domino effect to this, right? There's a domino effect to this conversation. People who look just like me, I am George Floyd, right? I am George Floyd. We are George Floyd, right? People who look like me are dying, right? So there's a domino process to this whereby we have to actually go way back to who is making policy. Who are we putting in those positions, right? So we have to actually exercise those kids in my classroom who are about to turn 18, who are going to have the first opportunity to vote. Because I remember Nikki Barnes was inspired by a teacher, right? I remember. So therefore, we have to be able to say, you know what, if you don't want to see your uncle, if you don't want to see your dad, if you don't see your older brother pinned down under a cop's knee, you have to vote for the person who's not going to do that. You're going to have to vote for the person who's going to be sensitive for the fact that we need to breathe. We need to breathe. I don't care. So that same person, Nikki Barnes, talked about, well, George Floyd had a long rap sheet. We're not going to make him into an angel. I don't care what he did before that. I don't care what he did before that. Okay? Let the a system decide what to do with him legally, but you are not going to decide as an individual after you've handcuffed him, after he's on the floor, to go ahead and put your knee on his neck. So I am responsible for me, but my community as a collective is responsible for me. And I also am responsible for the safety of you sisters in this room as well. So in order to not belabor the point, because we understand where we are and I value your time, I'm going to ask Dr. Drummond a question, and then I'm going to ask you sisters for closing remarks, because again, I was given permission to be vulnerable in public. I don't like it. I'm just afraid that I'm just going to totally fall apart when I think about where we are as a people, because we've done all of the right things. I mean, I have more degrees than a thermometer. I have the student loans to prove it. And still you're going to put your knee on my neck because I used a counterfeit $20 bill? It doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense to me. So Dr. Drummond, as a therapist of therapists, if you had the opportunity to talk to the Minneapolis Police Department and all the police departments in their trainings, because there has to be a component of psychological evaluation. There has to be a component in their training that has to talk about bias. If you have the opportunity to talk to these departments who are branding or molding these young police forces, what would you say to them?
I want to actually just say two things. The first is, I think a point made by, I think her name was Marjorie Sheba.
Yes.
She pointed out that there are a lot of people that come into the system with good intentions. If anybody has the time, you can look up the Stanford prison experiment in 1971. What they did was they actually took students, undergraduate students, and split them in half, had half as prison guards and half as inmates. Now, these were students who were already in class together. They knew each other, all of that sort of thing. But over the course of this experiment, those who were assigned in the guard position actually started to do some really heinous things to the people who were in the inmate position. Now, this is a factor of two things. One, the power dynamic dynamic, like we talked about, there not being any checks and balances. Sheila pointed that out. That's a factor of two things. Like I said, not having any checks and balances, that power dynamic, and then two, absolutely improper training. So like you said, what would I say to not only the police departments, the correction officers, all of these types of trainings for those of power and those that are in charge of making sure that people follow the rules. It is, one, of course, very important for them to understand the social dynamic of the community that they serve. So it's very important, like Nikki says, of course, you need to look like them. You need to be from there. You need to understand the dynamics of those people. But also, they need real psychological training. Right now, they have what is called CIT training in some of the police departments that is more related to how they approach mental health clients. So those that are, you know, schizophrenic or suffering from mental health, that needs to be widely expanded to not only mental health knowledge, not only how to manage those that are suffering from mental health, but also how to understand developmental differences in children of different races and ethnicities, so that they can actually be ready. Like she says, if a 13-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old Black boy turns his back and walks away from me, that is a cultural norm for how they actually manage not to become aggressive in a situation. That is something that they've been taught. Instead of being in the fight, walk away. So they need to not only understand, like I said, the mental health, but also the developmental differences within our culture, so that they can be more effective and more understanding of what our needs are. Recently, a white police handcuffed and took to jail an 8-year-old Black kid from school after he kicked another child. He kicked another child, and a white officer came to the school and handcuffed him and took him to jail. 8, because he cannot understand that 8-year-old kids get into arguments and kick each other on the playground. There needs to be better understanding of development.
Thank you so very, very much. So I'm going to give you ladies the opportunity to give some closing statements, but I'm going to ask you all to also include how can the public get in touch with you, because I do what's called targeted social media. I don't care if there's one person watching now, but eventually hundreds, if not thousands, will see this video. I will recirculate it. I do it on a daily basis. I get up like a prayer and recirculate my videos, because television and radio has nothing on social media. We will reach the widest audience possible. I will recirculate it because I want the people to know your names, know how to find you in your various respective cities, and to be able to continue the movement. I'm going to share with you a few names. Lydia Maria Child, Thomas Garrett, William Cooper Neal, Jeremiah Wesley Lugan, Jared Smith, William Steele. This is just a short list. Those names were white abolitionists. I'm going to say it again to everyone who might have joined us late. This is a movement for everyone in America. We are breathing the same air. We are drinking the same water. We are walking on the same land. I do believe in the village model. I'd like to say thank you to my white brothers and sisters who are also saying that the death of George Floyd is wrong. Thank you to the police officers who are kneeling down like Kaepernick, who are saying we want peace. This is a collective. There's just, as a teacher, you guys have been to school, right? As a teacher, maybe when the students walk through my classroom door for the first 5 seconds, I notice whether they're Black or white, but a few seconds after that, I forget what color they are. They are my students. They are my students. At that time, for those 90 minutes, they are my children. So if I can look after your children, you can look after mine as well. If I can look after you, if I see a car is about to run you over, I'm going to have to basically pull you, maybe even rip your shirt to keep you into safety and so forth. We have to look after each other. There's just no way. I mean, if I am mistaken, please tell me. Please tell me. I can't just live in a society where I'm just looking out for my own safety. This has to be a collective effort. It is my duty to make sure that you, Sheila, you're safe. It's my duty to make sure that Grace, that you're safe. That Keith, that Pam Keith, that Sheba, that Drummond, that Nikki. It's my duty for all of you to make sure that you're safe within my capacity. That's not something I should, in a civil society, that's not something I should even have to ask for. So tomorrow in the part 2, we have women of different ethnic backgrounds who are going to continue this conversation. I have a part 3 coming up as well. And I think, and by the way, there are some white folks I'd asked to get onto this platform. They said, you know what, Ted, I think I'm just going to support you silently. I respect that. I respect that. I'm not going to be upset with anybody, but I salute all white folks, Black folks, Hispanic folks, Native Americans who are going to scream and say, enough is enough. You cannot do this any longer. We're having this conversation after the fact. There's just nowhere in any policy it should be whereby, you know what, it's okay to restrain somebody by putting your knee on their neck. That is essentially intending to kill them. That's intending to kill them. I just do not even fathom that. So let's go ahead and start with candidate McCormick. Give us a closing statement, and then please end by giving social media land an opportunity to know how to reach you and how to join you on your mission as well as you run for Congress.
Well, definitely. I first wanted to say thank you so much to everybody who's here, especially the doctor who spoke last. You totally gave me life, because a lot of people don't understand the mental health issues that we have in our community, and even the police officers who see trauma every single day, who have to go to work and police. It is such a huge issue on both sides. And so our campaign, and me especially, we're dedicated to making sure that we're going to leverage the force that we have now and ensure that everybody's registering to vote. Everybody's going to request their ballots and vote. So when we give any kind of food out, we're giving out any kind of mask and gloves, we are asking you, before you eat that plate, please register to vote, or even request your absentee ballot. And that's something that if you think you're an influencer, if you think you're a leader, anybody who thinks they're leading anybody, we need to get them on board. You must require and say, if you're gonna be here, if we're gonna be doing this together, my ask to you is that you register to vote, is that you vote. That has to be paramount. Second thing that we have to do is, once we have these leaders in place, we have to make sure that they're doing the ask for us. If you are in Congress, you should be demanding that this is addressed. We have to demand that people are addressing these racial inequalities, and the work is getting done now. And the second thing is really trying to make sure that we have a telehealth portal that opens up to make sure that we're getting healthcare, that we're getting mental health. People say a lot about we can't afford it, but I've been in healthcare for 20 years. And I can tell you, we can afford a telehealth portal where you can get mental health assistance for everyone. It's disgusting to see what's going on, and no one is pushing that, and it does not cost that much. So these are the 3 avenues that we cannot let up on: voting, ensuring that these issues are being addressed, and making sure that we do have healthcare in every community, especially in the Black community. And
how can the community reach you?
They can reach me at SheilaForCongress.com. And we also have a text line if anybody needs any kind of help getting business loans, grants, unemployment. We're just here to serve the community. And that text line is 833-751-055. And you can text Sheila Cares, and we are definitely here.
I'm going to include all of these contacts in the description afterwards as well, just in case folks would like to be able to see that. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. Sheba, what are your closing remarks, Sheba? And unmute your microphone, and also leave an avenue by which the community can reach you.
Ted, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part. I'd like to say that this is essentially a fight for the long haul. You know, we are all here to appeal to each other's humanity. And we need to remember that this is not a fight about Blacks against whites, or Blacks against the rest of the world, or people of color against whites. It's really a fight against evil. You know, it's really putting right versus wrong. And so when you know that you have evil rulers and evil people of authority in this world, and not just in this country, but throughout this world, then those of us who stand for justice, those of us who stand for doing the right things, we have to say something. The only wrong thing to do is to do nothing. And so even those who do not wish to take part in perhaps a platform like this, or perhaps a protest or whatnot, at home you can speak with your children. You can address what's happening in the world. That's being effective. You can be effective in your own corner of the world, at work, wherever it is. And for the rest of us who are taking a leadership position, we have a responsibility towards each other and towards those of our people who perhaps are not as comfortable. It does fall upon us to help them understand. We talked about voting. We talked about making sure that we put our money, we vote with our money as well. We endorse those people that can help change policies. We need to engage our brothers and sisters to do more of that. Not everybody will have our same understanding level. Not everybody will have the same fight in them, but everyone can play a role where they are. So let the preacher pray, let the artists write songs about this, let those who can write letters, appeal, march, play the role that they are to play. It always struck me when the famous saying, which is by Harriet Tubman, when she said, "If I could have convinced more slaves that they were slaves, I could have saved 1,000 more." That's so powerful to me. If I could have convinced more slaves that they were slaves, I could have saved 1,000 more. We do have more work to do, and it's not enough for us to just say they don't understand and leave them behind. We need to engage. We need to pull our brothers and sisters in. People can contact me by visiting my website, marjorieshebalive.com. They can email me at info@marjorieshebalive.com. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so very much. Grace Carrington, unmute your microphone, and please, now that I believe we can hear you much clearer than before, talk to us about some closing remarks. And I'm not necessarily sure, because you work wonderfully behind the scenes. I know I'd love to see more of you and hear more of you every day. What are your closing remarks, and how can people reach you if you'd like to be able to share that?
Well, the first thing I want to do again is thank you, Ted, for giving us this platform to be able to communicate all these different aspects of what we need to do for our community, and dare I say, for humanity, because this is a humanitarian issue. Yes, it's overwhelmingly and disproportionately affecting Black and Black men, and that's for the whole diaspora. Caribbean, Haitian, the whole diaspora. Right. But it also is a humanitarian issue because we inhabit this earth, this planet together. So what affects one will ultimately affect all. I want to go back a little bit. I'm a big lover of James Baldwin and his readings. And it starts from being enslaved, being brought here on the slave ships. Then it goes to Jim Crow, then the civil rights. And now we're here. This also poses for us, I believe, an opportunity. And what I'd like to see is more of us make ourselves available statewide, like you have, like I have, like Nikki has, and many others, probably many of the speakers on this venue today. And make ourselves available to people, accessible to people, so that we can help communicate some of this stuff Pam was talking about, Pam Keith for Congress. The power of the vote, how it will change things in our communities and in our lives. Vote by mail is one of the biggest issues that we need to combat. The reason why it's being fought so heavily is because you don't have to Google anything, like Pam mentioned. When you have a ballot in front of you, you can call your Teds, your Nikkis. You can reach out to social media. Hey, what do you know about Congressional District 22? So-and-so is running, or whatever. You'll get so much information and congregate, which will help each person make an informed decision. It doesn't affect what's happening with COVID. You don't have to stand online at early voting or election day and risk your literal health and life to cast your vote and make a difference in your community. You don't have to worry about what the weather's like or what crappy machines they're going to send to your particular precinct. You have the freedom of which you can cast your ballot and make a difference. And it's about each one teaching one, Ted. And I'd like to say, if anybody's interested in finding out what they can do within their community and how we can help more people vote by mail, please reach out to me at the letter E, the number 4, committee woman, 2 M's, 2 T's, 2 E's, because somebody always leaves one of those out, at gmail.com. And of course, Ted knows how to reach me at day or night. And I just want to thank you again. This is so important. This should be the beginning, Ted, not the end. We need to keep talking about this because talk is repetitive. You know, we keep communicating with each other and talk about all the changes that we can make. I think we will make the difference that we're seeking, not just for this election, but for everyone after this one.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Thank you so very much. Let's go to Dr. Drummond. And Nikki, I'm going to open and close with you, so I didn't forget about you. After Dr. Drummond is going to be Pam Keith. Dr. Drummond, talk to us about some closing statements and leave with us again how to get in touch with you. And I am absolutely sure that folks will be needing your services in this time of need, because I need therapy. We all need therapy, okay? Pam, you have your hands raised?
Yes, no, I didn't raise a hand.
Okay, I thought I saw your hands raised. All right, go ahead, and then I'm going to see you, Pam, right after Dr. Drummond. Dr. Drummond, what are your closing statements and how can the community reach you?
So I just want to talk about how important it is to increase access to mental health and to health services. Right now, many private practices, especially private practices in low-income communities, were closed or have significant losses in revenues and are struggling to get back out there to serve the communities that they serve, as well as the community agencies during this time. Avid Intellectual, my company, we provide free strategic planning to these private practices and community agencies in order to get them back on their feet, get their doors open, get the teleservices put in, get their platforms up to date, get all of these, and like I say, as well as expand and incorporate mental health and psychological services for better serving their communities. And I can be reached at avidintellectual.com and on Facebook at Avid Intellectual Inc.
Thank you so very much. And all of this information, I'm going to go ahead and include in the description. So if it's going to put too fast for anybody watching, don't worry, I will definitely provide you with that information. Pam Keith, closing remarks. And I know I sound like a broken record, and I will say this to all of you again. I do not spend enough time with you ladies. I have so much I can learn from you, and there's so much that we can do together. I am just to think of the possibilities of what will happen when we put our minds together. Think of the possibilities. This is why they didn't want us to read. This is why they didn't want us to be speaking the same language. This is why we were kept apart, because they just know. The larger system knows that if we were to get together, and I am intending on that to happen, this is why I call people. I'm calling people, hey, you want to join this conversation? Please, because I want us to get together and actually, if it has to be a quiet revolution, and boom, we have somebody elected like another Barack Obama, or we have Sheila elected to office, or we have Pam elected to office and so forth, we're going to basically make that a quiet revolution, because we actually have the power in our DNA. We have the power in our DNA. I believe that. I have moments of doubt when I look at media. Dr. Drummond is a powerful sister, because she said she hasn't owned a television in 16 years. Wow, that is a powerful stuff. That's a powerful move. So I look forward to us collaborating and working together even more. Pam Keith, give us your closing remarks, and how can your constituents get in touch with you?
All right, I'm going to do a shameless plug, because I know that there are millions of Americans and thousands of Floridians that have become unemployed and have lost their health insurance as a result of that, and have lost their stream of revenue to get health insurance some other way. This Sunday at 8 p.m. on my Facebook page, we are having a town hall with Congresswoman Lois Frankel and Gwen Graham and one of our star sisters in the State House, Centris Driscoll, to address what is going on and how we're going to deal with all these people who don't have health insurance, and what's that going to do. So I want everybody, 8 p.m. Sunday on my Facebook page, please join that conversation if you know people in your community who need to know that information. You have two strong Black women running for U.S. Congress on this panel, and that's a blessing for Florida, because there are a lot of states that cannot say that. And both Sheila and I are not running only to represent the African-American community. We cannot. As members of Congress, it is our job to serve everybody in our district, and not just in our district. We're voting on legislation that affects the whole country. So we have to be open-minded and open-hearted. And I want to make clear to whoever is looking at this, that it is not our intention, it is not the intention of any Black person I know to put white people in the situation that we are in now. It's not about reversing the bad thing. It's about eliminating the bad thing. We don't have hate in our heart to try to subjugate white people. And I want to make that very clear. Our hearts are driven by love of our fellow citizens, no matter what they are, no matter what kind of skin color or religion or gender identity or whatever. We love our fellow citizens. That's why we are doing this. I'm a veteran of the United States Navy, and I know what it means to serve your country because you're proud of it. And I know what it means to be patriotic. But let me tell you something. Patriotism is not wrapping yourself up in the flag. It's not saying that you love America. It's saying that you love Americans. That is what real patriotism is about. And you can't love your fellow Americans if you cut out a whole slice of them because of their skin color or because of their gender or because of their religion. It just doesn't work that way. That's not who we are. So I'm in this battle, but let me tell you something, and I'm sure Sheila will echo this with me. One of the greatest challenges us Black women candidates face is the high barriers that are put before us by our own community. You'd be shocked if we had a deep conversation about how difficult Black people make it on other Black people when they try to obtain access to the halls of power. So if you see a Black candidate that's got their act together and that's got their heart in the right place, don't pledge them, don't haze them, don't make them jump through 16,000 hoops. Support them. Sheila needs the support. I need the support. We can win in this cycle. Let me tell you, anybody can win in this cycle given how crazy things are. We can win in this cycle if you all stand with us. And when we call and we ask for your support, when we ask for your endorsements, when we ask for your dollars, don't make it so hard on us. Don't make us chase you. Understand that there are so many people who are going to say no out the box. So if you can say yes, say it enthusiastically and quickly, because that's what's going to keep both she and I encouraged. That's what's going to keep us in the fight. Because you can't want us in the fight, but then not want to give us armor or weapons, right? That's not right. So you can always find me on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on the web. It's all the same branding, Pam Keith FL, and my last name is spelled like Keith Sweat, Keith, Pam Keith FL. On all of those different platforms, it's the same tagline. I do town halls every Friday where I just kind of talk about what's going on. Sunday nights are for specific issues where I bring experts in to talk about the immediate needs of Floridians. And there are 1,000 other things that I talk about, ideas, solutions, proposals. I'm on Twitter all over the place. I do believe that there is a space for activist candidates. I know I've been told that that's not a thing, but I'm trying to make it a thing because I don't want to convince you that I'm going to fight for you later if I can't show that I'm fighting for you now. So that is who I am, and I certainly hope that I get to run across many of you in these weeks and months ahead.
Thank you so very much, Pam Keith. Thank you so very much. And so now that I've spoken to you 5 ladies, let's go back full circle to Nikki Barnes in Florida. Nikki, I started with this and I will end with this. You are as a force of nature in Florida. Please talk to us about your closing statement and how can the community reach you, because I do believe that the grassroots is going to make this happen. I do believe that our people, the average person walking down the street who's really not thinking about any of this important stuff, right? They're thinking about putting food on the table. They're thinking about getting a job. They're thinking about their light bill. I do believe those are the people that we can kind of bring in, if for just a moment to vote, is going to change the landscape of Florida and possibly the landscape of this country. So talk to us, Nikki, about your closing statements and how can people get in touch with you. And I pledge myself, I'm making this public, this is on the record, to help all of you get the word out, okay? Post on the Broward social network. You know, maybe 10,000 people are not that many people. However, nowadays people are both winning and losing elections with razor thin margins, And we've seen it happen not too long ago. So if I can help y'all with a couple thousand votes, that's going to definitely be my contribution to the movement. So Nikki, let's hear from you. What say you about your closing statements?
Yeah, so two things I wanted to say before we wrap up today is one, I know we all agreed to move this conversation from last night to tonight because our beloved President Obama chose to give his speech during the same time slot. And one of the takeaways from his speech yesterday was a call to action, right? It was a call to action for our existing mayors and city council members and city commissioners and police oversight committees to pledge to investigate and really give some focus into these policing policies in our communities, right? So I encourage those that tuned in today or that will tune in later on and listen to the rewind, take that call to action. If you have city commissioners, city council members, mayors, or what have you on the ballot this year, make sure that they are aware of that call to action and that they are making that commitment. I think a lot of times our lawmakers run on law and not so much on budget. And they have the ability to influence where the money goes. And we need to know what their platform is around the money. So as we're having these Zoom town halls and Zoom candidate forums, be mindful of that call to action. Go to the obamafoundation.org, take a look at it. Make sure that you're familiar with it so you can ask the appropriate questions as they apply to your community. And let's not miss this opportunity to put the right candidates in the office this year that are pledging to take that call to action and are willing to enact those things immediately, either right now as they're in the office or when they take office later on this year. Secondly, for those that are, on the ballot this year, I admire you. It takes strength and courage to put yourself out there, to seek elected office, to have somebody dig up all in and out your business to figure out why you should or should not be in seats. And I also encourage you, as you're talking about being a lawmaker and looking at public policy, that you really focus on people policy and let your constituents know what you're doing or what you plan to do, how it would benefit them. And we saw a great example of this last 60 days or so when Congress passed the stimulus bill. Everybody knew about them $1,200. But everybody didn't know that student loans forgiveness didn't make it through. So it's very important that we're being storytellers. We're keeping the policies focused on people, that we are allowing people or teaching them how to ask lawmakers, okay, that title sounds really good, but do I get bread, butter, or steak on that one? Because, what's in it for me? And now is the time to be selfish. Your vote is valuable. Who you align behind is valuable. It is imperative that with all this unrest and chaos, that we are solid in making our demands, unifying behind that message, and making sure to get this stuff done and putting the right people in the right seats that are going to create this. So you're trying to get a hold of me. I am on Facebook, Nikki Barnes. You can friend or follow me. I'm also on Twitter at Dem Nikki Barnes, DEM Nikki Barnes, and I am on email, democratnickybarnes@gmail.com.
Thank you so very much. And as the closing statement, I'd like to just remind, for those of you who are seeing this, there's a few people watching, and for those of you who will see this, this was inspired by the police brutality recently experienced in America, which is nothing new, unfortunately. And I want to remind everyone that this is an endeavor for all Americans, all Americans. If you are seeing a system that is unfairly, unjustly putting a knee on anyone's neck. It's George Floyd this time. It's anyone's neck. You cannot just be casually there next door, right next to that person with your hands in your pocket and not saying that this is wrong. We are all humans. We are all equally children of God, okay? So in the middle of COVID-19, in the middle of hurricane season about to hit us, in the middle of economic downturn for the people who have lost jobs, because I'm from the third world, I'm from the Caribbean. I was born in the Caribbean, a child of the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Cuba, and I'm seeing in this great country, kids having to depend on the school system to feed them. In the middle of all of that, we have police brutality. We got our work cut out for ourselves. No one can remain silent during this time. So I'm going to ask all of you, I'm a teacher, and I'm going to boldly ask all of you to continue this conversation. It doesn't have to be with me, it doesn't have to be at the Broward Social Network. Continue this conversation with anybody who is willing to listen, and even with those who are not willing to listen, because it can be anybody under a cop's knee at any time. We must stop this. Also, if any of you know anybody else who needs a platform of a few thousand people, I'm going to have this again tomorrow night. I'm going to have this again on Saturday in Spanish. I'm going to have it in Creole, and I'm also working on having it in Portuguese. The universe has given me these gifts coming from the only island that I know that can nationally speak 3 languages. My parents sent me to school in Brazil, and as a result, I am perfectly fit for Florida to be able to tell my brothers and sisters who speak Spanish de la República Dominicana, que habla español, por favor, yo soy George Floyd. My brothers and sisters from Brazil, because you're not going to win an election if you do not reach out to Haitians. You're not going to win an election if you do not reach out to the people who speak Spanish, the Latino community. You're not going to win an election without the Brazilian community. So we all must be part of this process, because we are here. The land is ours. We pay tax here. We built this country. Therefore, we deserve to be respected. And on that note, with everything that I have, with everything that I am, I thank you, Nikki Barnes. I thank you, Sheila McCormick. I thank you, Dr. Drummond. I thank you, Pam Keith. I thank you, Sheba, Marjorie, and I thank you so very much, Grace Carrington. With everything that I have, I thank you all so very much. And let's please continue to keep up the good fight.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Ted.
God bless you all. Good night.
Our
Thank
pleasure,
you so
Ted.
Thank
Good
you so
night.
very much. Thank you so much.
Good
Good
night.
night. Good night. Thank you.